You know, if you think about what happened after 2008, the great financial crisis, I mean, anybody that, was looking around thought, hey, this is a changed world we live in now. When Bernanke started the QE program in 2010, you could see the handwriting on the wall. In fact, I wasn't alone. Look at China. At the time of the great financial crisis, China had 1.2 over that trillion dollars of U.S. treasuries. And then within just a short period of time after the GFC, and when they realized that they were going to start printing forever, they started selling them off. They're down to about 760, I think, right now. They're a little bit less than Japan. And the reason that's important, and I mentioned that to Bitcoiners, is because if you look around and you looked and you thought, gee, I got to get out of this system. I got to do something to protect myself. There really wasn't that much you could do. I mean, they were blowing an asset bubble. So if you were smart, you did, you put your wealth into asset bubbles and let it rip. And many boomers did that. But, this is a different world that we're in today. That's not going to happen going forward. You mentioned about conflicts and war, and this is probably my biggest hope. This is one of the reasons I got so excited about Bitcoin, is because I'm hoping that Bitcoin is going to be what stops this nonsense. We were in Afghanistan for 20 fucking years. And you know what? That's like 5 times as long as we were in World War II, a world conflict where we defeated, many powers, and it took 4 years. And now we're in Afghanistan for 20 years. If you look at the amount of money that we spent between Afghanistan and Iraq, it comes out to about $4 to $6 trillion.
Crazy.
Why could we do that? How can you fight a war for 20 some odd years? How can you spend $6 trillion? You can only do it one way. You can just print money. That's it. That's how you do it. If you look back on the past history of our country and other countries, you see that every time they get in a situation where they need to have a conflict, it's always printing money. So my goal, my hope was that Bitcoin would provide a way out. Once I began to study Bitcoin, and I didn't get it right away. You probably are smarter than I am. I got it, and I was trading shit coins, and I bought some Bitcoin. It went way up, and I sold it like an idiot. And but when you realize that you don't understand what you hold, the best thing to do is just get right back in the books. Just get in the books and start studying and reading and understanding, watching podcasts like this. And I did that. Once I understood it, once I really got it, I just started going back in and bigger and bigger. You know how that is. You start small. Next thing you know, you've got more and more of your wealth in there. And then today, sitting here today, I mean, I've got all my wealth in Bitcoin or a proxy. I've got some MicroStrategy stock too, but basically, everything I have is in Bitcoin. And I'm pretty damn happy too, I'll tell you.
Yo, I want to tell you about the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. I'm talking about bitcoinwell.com. What makes bitcoinwell.com different is that it's a completely non-custodial platform, meaning as soon as you buy Bitcoin and the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. And that perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of the separation of money and state. Support Bitcoin on-ramps that are self-custody by default. To get started, go to bitcoinwell.com today. It takes 2 to 5 minutes to sign up, and bada bing, bada boom, you're ready to buy Bitcoin.
It's interesting. And, to add to your point, George, like, I think most people that I've met, they start with altcoins and then they get their fingers burned metaphorically. And then they're like, oh, Bitcoin, Bitcoin only. And then they just, then they kind of understand and then they make the transition. Very rarely have I ever met someone that has just gone Bitcoin only from the beginning. So most people are like that. I put myself in that category too. I got into the industry via mining. So I always had an understanding of the infrastructure behind the Bitcoin network. And I knew that it was very unique in that sense, compared to like Ethereum. Ethereum migrated away from proof of work. So, but even when it was proof of work, if you compared the hash rate between Ethereum and Bitcoin, Ethereum never even came close. So the amount of computational power backing up the Bitcoin network really made it stand out. And then there was the fork wars that happened, where Jihan and Roger kind of teamed up, and then they artificially made the Bitcoin Cash hash rate like surpass Bitcoin's twice. And then you're like, wait a second, like is this Bitcoin Cash really thing? You know, is it really taking Bitcoin? Because as a miner, you're looking at that, you're like, wait a second. And then it wasn't only until after the fact that you were like, oh, that was artificial. They were literally setting money on fire in order to happen, or in order for that to happen. It wasn't actually market dynamics. But yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. Now, okay, so you know had a long career, like I was saying earlier. You got attracted to Bitcoin. You found Bitcoin. You started with altcoins. What was it about the Navy? What was it about your experiences, like that led you to the realization that money printing was funding everything? Because as obvious as that seems to us, that isn't something obvious to most people. Most people still think that inflation is caused by the weather and supply chains and et cetera, et cetera. You know, they have no idea that the government is the sole cause. So what really made you have that aha moment that you just opened your eyes?
You know, when you think about how people come to Bitcoin, it's usually that kind of a story where you start to dabble in it and then you get involved in it. And I'm sure that when you were first into Bitcoin, you didn't have the resources that I did to orange pill myself. And when I first got into Bitcoin, it was pretty much a number go up type of, you know, something I was looking for to either preserve wealth, maybe create wealth. But the more and more I became involved in it, you know, I'd have to say when I got out of the Navy, I didn't know any of this stuff we're talking about right now. None. When I got hired by Delta, I was clueless. And, you know, it really was not until 2008. It's not really until that period where I was forced almost to look outside because, you know, I was just the standard boomer. You know, you got a 401k and you just maybe do an index fund or anything, something like that. But you know what? That doesn't really protect your wealth. You don't understand how much you are being debased and how they are pulling the rug from under you until you really start to study. You know, I've read so many great books that discuss this. I mean, from, you know, Jekyll Island to Lords of, right now I'm finishing up Lords of Easy Money. That's an incredible story about how QE changed our country forever. So, you know, maybe I could attribute to Lyn Alden. I definitely could give her a shout out because I will tell you one thing. You know, I saw Bitcoin in 2012. I thought it was stupid as hell. And she wrote an article in 2017, same thing, you know, I could tell I wasn't ready to get in right then. And I don't think she did either. But, you know, when she came out in, I think it was like January, February of 2020 with the follow-up article, that changed me, that article. I will say that might be the moment because I read that article and I thought, you know, this gal, I follow Lyn and I subscribe to her newsletter. And you know what? This gal's smart. You know, I consider myself like an 80 IQ pleb. And I mean that. I'm a working stiff. You know, my whole life I've been working, just working my ass off. And, you know, to see somebody like that who's very intelligent and has really done the work. And I read her article probably several times. And I thought, you know what? This gal, she knows what she's talking about. And then I started following her. I just kept reading more and more. That's when I started really accumulating on a more serious note, you know, trying to stack. And today, I just cannot tell people. I wish I could somehow explain to you two things. You know, one, that you have a limited time left, guys, that this train is going to leave the station. I know it. You know, yeah, when you think of all the things that you and I have discussed, and including what's happened over the last 14 months, this path in front of us is clear.
Need liquidity without having to sell your Bitcoin? For more than 6 years now, Ledn has been the trusted choice for Bitcoin-backed lending with transparency, security, and trust at their core. I absolutely love these guys, and I personally not only have an account with them, but also a loan. And some of the key features that I love about Ledn is the fact that there are no monthly payments. You pay at the end of the term. You also have the ability to roll over the loan as well. and you can pay it back whenever you want. Essentially, what they do is that they help their clients unlock the liquidity of their BTC, allowing you to hodl while still accessing the wealth of your Bitcoin. They've been battle tested with their focus on transparency, security, and trust, allowing them to build a proven track record of client success and security, helping tens of thousands of clients harness the value of their digital assets with confidence and peace of mind. Learn more about what your BTC can do for you today. Simply Bitcoin viewers get 0.25% off their first loan by using the link in the video/podcast description. What are you waiting for? Head over to Ledn.io today.